The following is a world-class Bullshitters exclusive.
Today's video acts as a hybrid of sorts. I wanted to show some new Star Wars toy footage that I found, but I also wanted to cover the news that broke last week about Diamond, Selects, and Gentle Giant openly admitted that there's no demand for the modern Star Wars character. So I thought, what a perfect time to put this out. So stay tuned after the footage. We're gonna have a full video, and on top of that, we might even have some more footage. So stick around, guys, because we're about to do what we do best. So, I broke quarantine to go to my local grocery store to check out the toy section, and look what I find. Star Wars The Last Jedi merchandise. And look, Captain Phasma, an amazing character that... I can't even talk about this character. Anyway, here's the back of the box, clad in distinctive metallic armor, blah blah blah. You know the crap, you've seen her everywhere, except the last film because she wasn't that popular. Now here we have Darth Vader. Now I'm checking the back of the box because I'm pretty sure this came from the Force Awakens line way back in 2015. But really couldn't tell by that quick glance. So we're just going to put Darth down. We're going to look at the Stormtrooper, the Donald Duck Trooper, and there we go, confirmation. Star Wars The Force Awakens. Yes, Kylo Ren from the first film, and you can see this box is quite damaged. We have a rip on the top, the inside tray is falling out. These are all the signs, all the hallmarks of a toy that have sat on the shelf for almost 5 years. This came out in September of 2015, and here it is sat for all these years. And let's just cover these back up because, you know, no one's gonna buy them. Good old Darth Vader. And Captain Phasma, well, she can go behind Darth Vader. We'll give the Dark Lord of the Sith some respect. There he goes. So we had some Marvel toys. Those characters are popular and they move. We have Captain America, Black Panther, Hulk, and Iron Man. But up here we have Star Wars, Galaxy of Adventure Chewbacca. And Chewbacca looks like he's trying to impersonate Elvis or Paul Bearer, or he smells something really bad. To go with Chewbacca, we have a Stormtrooper, we have, well, let's just look at this. Excuse me, it's a Jet Trooper. They fly now. So we have that, we have Darth Vader, who looks kind of cool actually. I mean, you know, an animated style Darth Vader with Force slash action. Oh, can't wait. We have another Jet Trooper, we have another Chewbacca. But up here, we had more Galaxy of Adventure figures. We have my personal favorite Star Wars character, Han Solo, as he's played by Ashton Kutcher, which is just exactly what I want in a toy, with his sling and blast attack. So awesome. Then we have C-3PO. And now C-3PO looks a little, I don't know how to say it, like an incredible crash dummy. I mean, look, you press a button, he falls apart. They call it droid demolition. That's exactly what I want, demolition of my C-3PO. But yeah, even his eyes aren't painted on properly. C-3PO, your pupils are wonky. Are you high, C-3PO? You might be. Next to C-3PO, we have Kylo Ren, obviously from The Rise of Skywalker, and I obviously don't care because I'd rather look at these Hot Wheels. So we're gonna leave the store. Ooh, Mario Kart! So now we've checked out this store, let's go back and talk about a really important situation in regards to our Star Wars toy coverage. The truth. So I recorded this the other day, but it's the perfect time to put this out. And make sure you stay tuned because I'm gonna go back and pull out some footage to show you exactly why there is no love for new, modern Star Wars characters. You know, if you're the first person to notice something, they call you crazy. If you're the first person to make videos about it, they say you're seeking out attention. But if you were right all along, they remain silent. That's kind of been my experience covering the decline of the Star Wars merchandise. Going back to the beginning, I noticed a lot of pushback. People used to excuse the stocked shelves. They would say that they were a good thing. It was a sign that Star Wars merchandise was in demand. Well, I guess they forgot the part where some things were just not selling at retail for 2 years, and that became a problem. Throughout all the trips to film, all the hours editing, and all the conversations with fans, the one constant I found was that the demand for the new characters was non-existent. Now, obviously, I was called every name in the book, and rightly so, for pointing this out. I'm clearly the worst, and it's solely my fault that everyone abandoned Rose Tico. Well, that's a story for another time. But joking aside, it wasn't just me, but a lot of people who noticed the new characters just didn't do it. Now, a few months removed from the biggest disappointment in the Star Wars saga, The Rise of Skywalker, insider information confirming what we've all known all along has been released, and it's shocking to none. Bleeding Fool has the story. Diamond Toys says no demand for Disney Star Wars characters. Chuck Tercero, the president of Diamond Selects Toys, was recently interviewed by RebelScum.com, and here's a portion of that interview that was very interesting. With the release of Star Wars The Last Jedi back in 2017, to date, we've gotten a Luke Skywalker mini-bust, a Praetorian Guard statue, and an Executioner Trooper statue, and some Porg bookends. Needless to say, the Episode 8 shelf has some room for more characters. Are there plans to continue making products from that film? As you know, whatever was done before last year, Diamond Selects Toys had no control over. Gentle Giant Limited made those decisions. But as I said, Dev is still here, guiding the brand, and we were aware of the past history. I will say, from what we have seen, the sales on products from episodes 7 and 8 were not too strong. I know those movies, as well as 9, have their fans, and those fans might say that Gentle Giant just never did the right products or characters or formats, and they might be correct. However, we can only go by what we know. For sure, the door is not closed on the sequel trilogy products, and we are working on a couple of pieces for The Rise of Skywalker right now. We're not allowed access to all the movies before it came out, so some work could not begin until after the movie came out. We've been keeping a very close eye and listening to fan feedback, so if there was demand, we'd be happy to satisfy it. Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker hit theaters last December, and it looks like there are just 3 pieces up for pre-order at this time. Those being the Sith Trooper mini bust, the Kylo Ren Dreamer Premier Collection statue, and the Kylo Ren Legends in 3-dimensional bust. I would imagine there's some very requested characters, especially in the ever-popular mini-bust line, that fans would love to see. Names like Emperor Palpatine, Poe Dameron, Zori Bliss, Babu Frick, Lando Calrissian, C-3PO, and more. Can you speak on when we might see more characters from the final chapter in the 9 Star Wars film saga? As I mentioned before, we are working on some, but I have to ask, are you sure there's a lot of demand for these very requested characters? The overall demand for bust and Star Wars product is not what it was 10 or even 5 years ago. It's not just a Gentle Giant issue either. The brand is very strong with The Mandalorian and The Clone Wars, and more new content to come. But you all know what the production runs on collector's products were in the past compared to now. We would very much like to make more products from the new movie. We're not sitting behind our desk wringing our hands thinking how can we stick it to the fans and not make busts of what they want and not make us money, right? We just, as of yet, have not seen enough fans that would want to buy busts that have personal affection for some of those new characters that make sense to justify going to production. But for sure, we're watching it, and perhaps as more time passes, fan affection for these characters will grow. 5 years ago, What happened 5 years ago? So it's refreshing to see a Star Wars licensee be honest for once. This isn't Hasbro telling us we're all fine here now, thank you, how are you? No, this is a company who has been making Star Wars merchandise for almost 2 decades. Hell, they were on the set for episode 2, digitally scanning props for accuracy. So this isn't some fly-by-night company who just got into the Star Wars game. They're a major player, and the fact that they're speaking up speaks volumes to the frustration they must be feeling. Let's take a look at what Chuck, the Gentle Giant representative, said. I will say, from what we've seen, the sales on the products from 7 and 8 were not too strong. I know those movies, as well as 9, have their fans, and those fans might say that Gentle Giant just never did the right products or characters or formats, and they might be correct. However, we can only go by what we know. So what they do know is that the new characters aren't popular with the buying audience. It seems obvious now, but back when everyone was still high on The Force Awakens, this was akin to blasphemy. Apparently, everyone thought Rey was fantastic, Kylo Ren was as threatening as Darth Vader, and the mystery of Snoke was greater than finding out if Vader was really Luke's father. Yeah, right, none of those things were accurate then, and they're sure as hell not accurate now. Chuck's next quote really shows the Force PR bullshit that these companies are forced to play into. Remember, this is what they wanted to present publicly. As I mentioned before, we are working on some, but I have to ask, are you sure there's a lot of demand for these very requested characters? I just want to take a moment to thank Chuck for speaking what we're all thinking. Are you sure there's a lot of demand for these very requested characters? No! The answer is no, and you know that, man! Websites ask these very stupid questions because they don't want to... Wait a sec, they can't afford to alienate themselves from Lucasfilm by being honest with their reporting. They have to act like everything coming out is the greatest thing in the world. All websites that want access act like this. It's the only way they remain viable. People come to them because they have information. The only way they get to keep that up is by throwing softball questions so as not to make anyone uncomfortable. It's blatantly obvious that everyone involved in making Star Wars merchandise knows the lack of demand for the sequel trilogy characters. But it's these offensively inoffensive journalists living in denial who keep propagating the lie that all fans love the sequel trilogy. We don't. How did we get here? Well, you can follow the trail quite easily. 5 years ago, this December, The Force Awakens was released, and all the hype was surrounding the return of the original trilogy characters. That was a marketing plan that worked. It was the most successful of the sequel trilogy because people went to see the film multiple times. Once they got past the hype and nostalgia, they were left with bland characters in blander costumes. Meet Rey in her desert robes. Why does she look like this? Because Luke Skywalker dressed that way in A New Hope. Meet Poe Dameron in his awesome flight suit. Why does he dress this way? Because Luke Skywalker dressed this way in A New Hope. Meet Finn in his jacket. Why does he dress this way? Because the guy who originally wore this jacket was a dollar store Han Solo. When people realized this was the new direction for Star Wars, they bailed. The subsequent films barely made half of what The Force Awakens made, and when the great Star Wars glut of 2017 became painfully obvious, though great sites like Collider kept telling us everything was fine, situation normal, it wasn't. The overabundance of sequel trilogy merchandise happened for many reasons, but the one that was caused by hapless idiots was #Where'sRey. Here's a brief reminder. As Star Wars The Force Awakens broke all box office records Wednesday, just 20 days after release, fans were clamoring to stores, online and off, looking for merchandise representing their favorite characters. And many have wondered, where's Rey? The main character, a young woman, has been sorely missing from shelves, games, and action figure sets for months. Creating an internet outcry and causing the #Where'sRey to trend. Hasbro recently came under fire for excluding the female character in its Monopoly game, causing many, including this 8-year-old girl, to write to the company. Hasbro has said the reason Rey was excluded from the Monopoly game was to avoid spoiling main plotline points, and announced the new edition of Hasbro's Monopoly game will include the character. But some companies seem to think female action figures don't sell. According to Action Figure Insider, before The Force Awakens, the franchise had 6 female action figures available out of 100. Mattel doesn't make any female action figures for its Battlestar Galactica or Clash of the Titans line. The company doesn't even make a Mindy figure to pair with the Mork figure, for those who get that reference. We still seem to live in a corporate world that thinks girls don't play with action figures, and that female leads aren't as interesting as male leads. But now this outmoded thinking is costing not only society, but also company bankrolls. Stores have seen Rey merchandise fly off the shelves. They can't stock it as fast as fans want it, and it's not just for the girls, the boys want it too. When Rey toys are not in stock, or worse, when they've not been made, kids may internalize that to mean that they must not be that important. Kids are fast to believe that what they like may not be in line with what they should like, and to adapt to what they like. No one wants to be the odd man out in the preteen years, and so, without public indignation, another generation is at risk of growing up thinking women simply aren't as big of a deal as men. Well, history hasn't been too kind to this article, because we've proven how full of it these people were. Now, for the record, Rey was in the first wave of the Force Awakens 3.75-inch figures, as well as the 6-inch Black Series. She was there all along, but silly Hasbro gave it a social media pressure and pushed forward. Sillily. It was dumb. To avoid the harsh pushback, Hasbro and other licensees went full bore with Rose Tico. They should have kept her at home, because her failure as a Star Wars figure has become the stuff of legend. Hell, they erected towers in her honor. Okay, it was just me, but the results were hilarious. Check them out. When we came around to episode 9, Rose Tico was not only nowhere to be found on store shelves, she was mostly absent from the film itself. Everyone learned the hard way that pushing a bad character only hurts the IP they come from. And I'm looking at you, Doctor. But when your terrible, terrible character is the main character, you really have written yourself into a corner and you have to just push forward and hope everything doesn't fall apart in the process. Luckily for Disney, it fell apart right after it ended. Speaking of 9, when we got that film, merchandise was already being clearanced weeks before the film was released. That shouldn't come as a shock to any fan, because the same thing happened with Solo. #Solo lost money. And on the Solo figures, it was a deal so sweet that even I couldn't pass them up. A lack of demand for merchandise comes from a lack of knowledge about the upcoming films. Ever since J.J. Abrams brought his mystery box crap to Star Wars, we've all been losing. I guess his big marketing angle was to keep them talking and keep them wanting more. Well, JJ, we didn't even want what we got in the first place, and no surprise is going to make us forget how historically bad Star Wars has been handled. Jumping back to the article, it's interesting how Gentle Giant Studios acknowledges that there's a demand for Star Wars merch. Just nothing from the sequel trilogy, with The Mandalorian and Clone Wars being the 2 named series. I have to ask though, is it too late for the Mandalorian merchandise? Disney seems to be riding the wave of goodwill and jumping the gun by announcing Season 3. What if people don't like it? What if they Johnson it? Take something amazing and remove all the good parts so you have a big pile of shit. And that's gonna suck for all of us, because we'll be left with Baby Yoda merchandise galore and a bad show. And nobody wants that. Nobody. I've often wondered if Disney was too late with the Mandalorian merchandise, or just too oblivious to what they had in their hands. They're under the guise that everybody loves the sequel trilogy, but it was a small Star Wars TV show that captured everyone's attention instead of the big final chapter to the Skywalker saga. We'll see the influx of merchandise drop before Season 2 while the goodwill is high. After that initial episode drops, well, all bets are off. This whole situation is what happens when you cater to people who don't buy your products. In this case, it's the Reylos, the SJWs, and the people that just don't like Star Wars in the first place. Let's make Star Wars more accessible for the people who don't like it and push out the folks who do. That is a wise business decision that even Yoda envies. That's why Episode 9 was considered a $1 billion wash. The people hurt the most in all of this, besides the fans, are the people who pay through the nose to make Star Wars merchandise. If we look at what's supposed to be released, and by supposed to I mean this current virus is messing up production and distribution all over the world, most of the merchandise set to be released is from the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy merch. And the sequel trilogy, well, that's an afterthought. Just like the films themselves. So, what did you all think of this situation? I laughed. I also applauded at just the honesty of the gentle giant president. Because for months, for years, all we hear is everybody likes these characters and you're in the minority and this doesn't represent that and shut up, you're just a sexist, blah, blah, blah. You know what? I can't even say it with vigor anymore because I'm so tired of reciting it because it's been said to me countless times. But guess what? At the end of the day, we were right. The people that have the numbers, that have the analytics, that make the merchandise, that deal directly with Disney, they're not dealing with the new sequel trilogy characters because there's just not a demand. So everyone that tells me Zori Bliss was the most fascinating character of 2019, shut up. Alright? Baby Yoda that goes, "Gah!" made more of an impact than anybody from episode 9. Star Wars isn't dead, the sequel trilogy is. The more I realize that, the more I have a sense of calm come over me, because my favorite parts of the galaxy far, far away have been bastardized and ruined, but there is hope, a new hope if you will. But us fans will strike back if you fuck this one up too, Disney, because there will be no return of the fandom. So folks, I'm going to head out of here for today. Thank you for watching. Before you go, do me a favor, make sure you have that notification turned on to all and hit that thumbs up button. If you want more videos from us, well, spread the word and help us get these videos out there so people can find us. It's been a little bit of a slow period due to the YouTube changes and the algorithm stuff, but that's okay. We're not giving up. We've doubled our efforts, and we're going to continue to work hard. So if you like what we do here and you want more, well, check us out over on Patreon, patreon.com/worldclassbs. For $1 a month, you get access to World Class Bullshitters After Hours, which is our spicier, less directed podcast that records right after the main show on Thursday nights. But if you join at the $5 a month level, you get access to our wrestling show, commentaries, and all kinds of special bonus things, like our video footage from Star Wars Celebration last year, where Dion tries to get recruited by the Galactic Empire. It's quite an interesting view, so check it out. We're all in it, and if you want more stuff like that, well, Patreon helps us do that kind of stuff. I don't know where Star Wars Celebration 2020 sits. With Comic-Con getting canceled, I'm worried that we're not going to get that. And I want that. I wanted to have the time to meet the fans, hang out. We had a fantastic time in Chicago last year, and I wanted to keep the hype up. But we don't know what's up, so make sure you guys keep watching the channel for more updates and information. So folks, that's it. I've said it 3 times, but we're going to finally end the video, so thank you for watching. Be safe, but most importantly, always be excellent to each other.